I've always been a light sleeper. The slightest noise can wake me up. But when I moved into this old house in Virginia, I thought the quiet of the countryside would finally give me some peace. The house was a bargain, a beautiful two-story colonial that had been on the market for months. The previous owners left in a hurry, or so the realtor said. They even left some of their things behind. A rocking chair in the nursery, a few old toys, and a baby monitor, still plugged into the wall. I didn't have a baby, and had no plans for one, but I figured I'd get around to packing it all up eventually. For the first few weeks, everything was perfect. I slept better than I had in years. The silence was absolute, broken only by the chirping of crickets outside my window. Then came the first night. It was just past 3 in the morning, 3:02 a.m. to be exact. I remember because I glanced at my alarm clock when the sound jolted me awake. It was a crackle of static, coming from the corner of my bedroom. It took me a moment to place it. The baby monitor, the receiver unit, was sitting on my nightstand, where I'd left it after tidying up. I hadn't even bothered to unplug it. The static was annoying, but I was too tired to get up. I rolled over, trying to ignore it. But then, through the static, another sound emerged. It was soft, rhythmic, breathing, slow, deep, raspy breaths, like someone was struggling for air. My heart started to pound. I told myself it was just interference. Maybe it was picking up a neighbor's monitor, though my nearest neighbor was half a mile away. I sat up in bed, my ears straining. The breathing continued, steady and unnerving. I reached out to unplug the receiver, my hand trembling slightly. But just as my fingers touched the plug, a voice came through the speaker. It was a voice that didn't belong in a nursery, a voice that had no business coming from a baby monitor. It was deep, guttural, and it felt fundamentally wrong, like grinding stones. And it said, clear as day, he's sleeping again. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Who was he? Who was speaking? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. A prank. A crossed signal with some truckers on a nearby highway. Nothing felt right. The voice was too close, too clear. I ripped the plug from the wall socket, plunging the room back into silence. For a long moment, I just sat there, my own breathing loud in my ears. I told myself it was over. It was a faulty device, a bizarre electronic fluke. I finally lay back down, pulling the covers up to my chin, even though the summer night was warm. I tried to close my eyes, to force myself back to sleep, but the words echoed in my head. He's sleeping again. That's when I heard it again. Not from the monitor this time. The monitor was dead, unplugged. The sound came from outside my bedroom door. From the hallway, it was the same breathing, that same slow, labored rasp. It was faint, but it was unmistakably there, and it was closer now. My blood ran cold. This wasn't interference, this wasn't a prank. Whatever was making that sound was inside my house. I held my breath, listening. The floorboards in the hallway were old. They creaked with the slightest pressure. I waited, praying I wouldn't hear that telltale sound. And then it came, a long low creak, right outside my door. It was slow, deliberate, the sound of a heavy weight settling onto a single board. Someone, or something, was standing right there. I was paralyzed with a fear so absolute it felt like a physical weight pressing down on me. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. My eyes were locked on the thin sliver of light under my bedroom door, waiting for a shadow to pass, waiting for the doorknob to turn. The breathing was louder now, a wet, rattling sound that seemed to seep through the wood of the door. Then, the voice spoke again, not from a speaker but from the other side of the door. It was the same deep, wrong voice, but now it was raw, unfiltered by electronics. It was right there. And it whispered, so close I felt I could feel the vibration through the door. I see you. My mind just broke. I didn't think, I just reacted. I scrambled out of the far side of the bed, away from the door, and fumbled for my phone on the nightstand. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I didn't even know who to call. The police. What would I say? That I heard a voice in my house. They'd think I was crazy. A new sound started. A scratching, a light, persistent scratching at the bottom of the door, like fingernails dragging slowly across the wood. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was methodical, patient. It knew I was in here. It was toying with me. I backed away until my back hit the cold wall of the far corner of the room, my phone clutched in my hand like a useless talisman. I sank to the floor, pulling my knees to my chest, making myself as small as possible. The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Then the doorknob began to jiggle. Gently at first, then more insistently. It wasn't a frantic rattling, like someone trying to break in. It was a slow, deliberate turning, back and forth, testing the lock. I had locked the door before bed, a habit from living in the city, a habit that now felt like the only thing keeping me alive. The brass knob glinted in the moonlight filtering through the window. Back and forth, back and forth. It was taunting me. It was showing me how easily it could get in if it wanted to. The rattling stopped. I didn't dare to breathe. I listened, every nerve in my body screaming. Then I heard footsteps. They weren't moving away. They were moving down the hall, towards the stairs. Each step was heavy, dragging, punctuated by that same awful, wet breathing. I heard the old stairs groan under the weight, one by one, as it descended. Where was it going? The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but a sliver of hope cut through it. Maybe it was leaving, maybe it was over. I stayed huddled on the floor, not moving a muscle, for what felt like hours, listening to the house settle around me. The silence returned, deeper and more complete than before. Finally, as the first grey light of dawn began to creep into the room, I found the courage to move. My limbs were stiff and sore. I crept to the door and pressed my ear against it. Nothing, just silence. I slowly, carefully, turned the lock. The click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet house. I opened the door a crack and peered out. The hallway was empty. Sunlight streamed through the landing window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It looked so normal, so peaceful. Had I imagined it all? A waking nightmare brought on by stress and a new environment. I crept down the stairs, my heart still hammering. The first floor was just as I'd left it. Nothing was out of place. I checked all the windows, all the doors. Everything was locked, secure. There was no sign of a break-in, no sign that anyone had been there at all. I felt a wave of relief, but it was quickly replaced by a creeping dread. If no one broke in, then whatever I heard had been inside with me all along. My eyes fell on the living room, and that's when I saw it. The baby monitor, not the receiver from my bedroom, but the other unit. The transmitter, the one from the nursery. It wasn't in the nursery anymore. It was sitting on the coffee table, in the middle of the living room, directly facing the bottom of the stairs. It was unplugged, and placed neatly beside it, in a perfect, straight line, were 3 small, grey stones. I've never gone back into that house. I drove away that morning and never looked back. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I can still hear that voice in my head. He's sleeping again, and I wonder who he is, and what happens when he finally wakes up.